Hey there, I'm Gary Parrish. Welcome back. CBS Sports, Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander's here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel. It'd be awesome if you did that while you're here. Let's get into it. Today, we are continuing our series on the top 25 college basketball stories of the past 25 years, which is really just Norlander's top 25 college basketball stories of the past 25 years. Obviously, with the exception of Bob Knight's termination at Indiana on September 10th, 2000. We're just going to omit that one.
Hold on. I knew you were going to say this. This is going to be in the written portion that publishes later this month. In all seriousness, I'm giving you the autonomy here. When the written portion goes up, the Bob Knight retirement will be in the list, and it will be in the top 10. Just off the top of your dome, where do you think that story should be? It's obviously not number 1 or 2, but as high as 3, as low as 10. Just broadly, where would you place that one? It's all you.
I'd like to place it 6, if you don't mind.
You want it 6?
I think 6.
It won't be 6 on this episode. It'll be 6 when the story publishes in full later this month on your CBS Sports app.
Oh, man, I can't wait for that. That's exciting to hear. So we've made it to the top 10. We've already done numbers 25 through 11. We're in the top 10. Are you ready right now, Matt Norlander, to unveil the next 5 of the top 25 college basketball stories of the past 25 years, with the exception of Indiana firing Bob Knight, September 2000?
Let's go right now. Let's hop into the time machine. I'm going to read you directly. I won't even say what the 10th one is. You're going to know it within the first sentence that I read here, but I'm going to take you back to what I wrote that night when our number 10 story, which is also an elite moment. Those are 2 separate things. We can get to that in a second. This is what I wrote on an early Tuesday morning in April, 9 years ago. Wow, it's been 9 years. Villanova's Kris Jenkins calmly tossed the ball to Ryan Arcidiacono, 4.7 seconds and approximately 70 feet away from the first true buzzer beater and greatest ending in college basketball title game history. Arcidiacono took 6 dribbles as he snaked his way up the floor. Jenkins was playing possum by trailing, but not rushing too fast. He didn't want to scare the defense, and he knew he'd have the space. Jenkins' defender, Isaiah Hicks, followed the ball, not the man. The double team inevitably came on Arcidiacono when Joel buried the second, and then Hicks picked him up. Right then, the Villanova senior heard a voice. He heard Jenkins bark, "Arch! Arch! Arch!" Game on the line, Arcidiacono gave the ball up. Villanova's most defining trait is a team of trust. So Arch went instinctive and coolly, casually, passed to a trotting and trailing Jenkins. He's one of the smartest basketball players we've had, Villanova coach Jay Wright said of Jenkins. Get the feet set, shot up, Hicks his hand in his face, but not there in time to alter the shot. So when Arch threw me the ball, Jenkins said, 1, 2 step, shoot him up, sleep in the streets. Stand, then crouch, pray, and wait. Wait for overtime or for history and the greatest ending to an NCAA championship game. The winning play, dripping in symbolism, is named Nova. It's run in every Villanova practice. It is their go-to with less than 8 seconds remaining in a game. It is the play Scotty Reynolds scored on in 2009 to vault Villanova to the Final Four. It will now be known even more so for blasting Villanova into history and highlight reels forever. Jenkins was the play's last, but also best option. This, by the way, coming after one of the all-time "Are you kidding me right now" shots by Marcus Page, the final make of his career, an absolute stunner. Quote, "The shot Marcus Page made was an unbelievable shot," end quote, Jenkins said. The shot that made popcorn out of seat cushions would be topped. Quote, "If we didn't have a timeout, the guys would have known to run that play," end quote, Villanova assistant Baker Dunleavy said. So Jenkins is bent down, and then with a kaboom, the ball gently cradles through the net. Villanova 77, North Carolina 74. Pandemonium, confusion, bolts from the blue. Quote, "I don't know what I did, but it went in," end quote, Jenkins said. "I just stood there. 1 second, 2 seconds, bang," end quote. Streamer shotgun out from above, diving and cascading to the floor as Villanova celebrates its second title in program history. And here comes Melody Britt like a contestant on The Price is Right, barreling down 67 steps between sections 125 and 126, busting through people to get to her husband, Nate Britt Sr., who is in tears over what he's just seen his son do. What was Jenkins believing when the shot went up? Ball game, he said.
Just to, first off, well done by you. Beyond that, just an awesome sports moment. And I kind of like that Kris Jenkins hit the shot as opposed to, Mikal Bridges or something like, because it's just like, it's his moment. Yes. He didn't go on to have this, he's not going to be switching ball screens in the Eastern Conference Finals for the New York Knicks. Kris Jenkins was a very good college basketball player, but a college basketball player. And you'll remember that guy forever. I'll remember that guy forever. Casual college basketball fans will remember that name forever. It's just you called it the greatest ending in NCAA tournament history. I co-sign that because, like, you can go back to NC State, but that was like a botched play.
Yeah. I mean, it's also all-time memorable stuff, but on a technicality, that's not a buzzer beater. The ball went through the net, and the rule back then was the clock continued to run out. If that was modern rules, theoretically, Houston still has enough time to get off a prayer. This was ball is in the air, buzzer with the title on the line goes through. It's the only time that's ever happened in the history of the men's tournament.
So NC State, like, whether it was a buzzer beater or not, it was the ending of a tournament, and it was an awesome moment, but it was like, it didn't go as planned. It just turned into an awesome moment. This went exactly as planned, and everything about it was just perfect. I went back and watched it last night.
How could you not, right? When you're doing I mean, just an unbelievable moment. Go ahead.
It's almost like you're sending me little Christmas presents. Yeah. Like you say, hey, the next 5 are in the document. And I go look and I go, ooh, all right, let's just relive. Because I just want to, I am not capable of just recalling all of this stuff off the top of my head. You probably assume as much. But I can go back and watch it and then, like, I don't know, feel like relive it and remember things from it that I may have forgotten. And just, I've had fun doing that. And so I dove into this last night. Lots of interesting stuff there. First off, Grant Hill, to his credit, who's on the call with Jim Nantz, Bill Rafferty, Tracy, like, in the timeout leading into this moment, actually says, you've got to, watch Jenkins coming up the court. They could have a little trailer. Like, he mentioned something along those lines. And then as the play is unfolding, Grant again says
watch Jenkins.
He says watch Jenkins. Yes. Even before Jenkins gets the ball, he says watch Jenkins. So that's all interesting. You look at how UNC guarded it. They just left Jenkins come up the court all alone.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time he catches the ball from Arcidiacono, there are 3 UNC players below the free throw line. They just let him run free or jog free, trot free up the court, and then pitched it back. And then the shot is beautiful. Jay's reaction, like, the best. Like, if you were just ever trying to look cool, which is a perfect Jay moment. If you were ever just trying to look cool in a moment where most people are incapable of looking cool, like, he nailed it. Contrast it. I'll just go back to the NC State thing. There's Valvano running around the court crazy.
Couldn't be more juxtaposed. Great.
Could not be more different, right? Both are awesome. Both are awesome. I love them both. I think I would like to be more like Jay in that moment. I might be more like Jim in that moment, but I think I'd like to be more like Jay.
They're both legendary. Like, they're in the all-time sizzle reel NCAA tournament, regardless, because of how different they are.
Yeah. So that's an incredible. Just every aspect of that moment is awesome, unless you're a North Carolina fan, of course. And then it does completely overshadow something you've already mentioned, which is, if not for that moment, one of the greatest shots in NCAA tournament history is made by Marcus Page like 6 seconds earlier.
Crazy. You can actually see it. So this is back. I'm in view of the shot. This is where I was sitting. So I'm facing the camera, and it's insane. It's me, and then Nicole Auerbach was sitting next to me, and the shot is so unlikely by Page. Like, just instinctually, just we pop up out of our seats because so many other people are just, like, standing up. It's a crazy, like, Page could take that shot in that way 40 times and might make it twice. Like, just in addition to the pressure of the moment. I would like to believe that, because of the outrageous nature of the shot, at least, like, not in addition to us talking literally right here on the podcast, but people do remember it. It's become one of the all-time plays that gets overshadowed by a bigger play kind of deal. Larry Fitzgerald had one of these in the Super Bowl. There's any number of them, but yeah, it was just wild. And as for the game winner, from my perspective, I mean, this is just one of the all-time, just so lucky to be in the building kind of moments in general. There's actually another game that we're going to get to here. It's not, the game isn't the story, but the story includes the game. So a few of these that just, to have been in the building for this kind of stuff is wild. But when Jenkins shot, like, Page's shot, it's in front of me. I see the whole thing. When Jenkins' shot happens, people are standing up. And so I see him release, and I can still see it in my mind's eye. I see Jenkins crouch down, but the ball, I can't remember what was, something obstructed in that moment. So all I hear is the confetti cannons going off, and Villanova's bench in front of me going absolutely nuts. But I never saw ball cradle into net there. Kind of a surreal way to experience a moment like that when everyone's eyes are watching it, and then by pure chance, it's just like, wait, did it? Okay, yeah, it did. And a very, very amazing just sequence. Again, this is a moment. So we're doing the top 25 stories. If we were doing top 25 moments, this is one of the 3 biggest moments in college basketball over the past 25 years. The moment is so big that it rises to the occasion of being a top 10 story. It's Villanova's second title. It's the championship that basically gives Jay Wright the Hall of Fame credentials that were finalized once they won a second championship in 2018. But I want to just hit back on something you said at the top. Jenkins getting this, like, it's his. He deserves it. His name is forever. That shot will play until the sun swallows the earth. It was a privilege to be in the building, and the way that it is such a unless you're a Carolina fan, and guess what, Tar Heel fans, you won a national championship the next year. But the way the play actually unfolds is so appealing to watch. It's a play that was executed as designed, and it's just rhythmically perfect. Bada bing, bada bang, bada boom, bang, literally. Nova wins it. Jay Wright delivers one of the all-time reactions we've ever seen in any sport ever in a championship moment.
And now we see that play all the time in basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it before then as well, but like everybody's got some version of that now. And it gives Villanova that championship, gives Jay his first of 2, because North Carolina, like you said, wins it the next year. Then Villanova comes back, wins it the year after that. Carolina, by the way, loses the title game and in a heartbreaking way, and then bounces back and wins the whole thing next year.
Mm-hmm.
We might end up revisiting that because Houston could do something very similar.
Good point.
They're just among the teams that could do something very similar.
Yep.
So it gives Villanova all of that stuff, and then diminishes what would have been an incredible NCAA tournament moment forever. Like, Marcus Page's shot is the equivalent of Chalmers for the tie, just like 6 seconds earlier, if it actually forces overtime. But we never get to overtime, because you did hear Jim. I went back and watched it. I just sort of chuckled to myself, because just like Dozier for the championship, he does say Jenkins for the championship.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
He says Jenkins for the championship. But Page, that play, I didn't remember it quite like this. It almost went badly so many different times before Marcus actually got the shot off. First off, Villanova switches the ball screen. It's not a ball screen. Marcus is trying to pop out and get free. There's a screen set for him. They switch it. Ochefu goes with him, and then he almost steals a bounce pass.
Yeah.
And then Page sort of gets a look, but Arcidiaco is then closing, and it's a double pump that falls with 6.7 seconds left, tie game, and then of course, you know what happens next. But we may live forever, probably not, but we won't watch a final 7 seconds of a national championship game like that probably ever again.
If we do, how lucky we would be. Villanova fans probably remember this, but something that I can't remember if it's in my full-on column from that night, but other people did note it. Ochefu, I think as a result of the play you just described, he wound up on the floor. He had a huge sweat spot there.
Yes.
And knowing what play was going to come. I actually think the broadcast gets this as well. Knowing what play was going to come next, he just didn't want to take a chance. Like, game's on the line here, and I'm going to make sure that this damn wet spot is taken care of here, so we don't even chance it. So, yeah, just a lot of stuff surrounding that. An incredible moment. It's number 10 on the podcast, but GP just bumped it out. It'll be number 11 as a result of Bob Knight getting there when the list publishes later in July. Let's get to number 9, and this is a story that I jostled with where to put it, because I actually think you could bring it. And in prepping for this particular episode, GP, this was the one that I spent the most time going back and looking at. And I've got a lot of stuff here. I might not get to all of it, but I really debated putting this as high as 6 or 7 or as low as 15 or 16. And it is the massive, widespread conference realignment that primarily materialized in 2012 and 13, but really functionally started taking place in 2010 and then went on subsequently for about 3 years. That led to the Catholic 7 breakaway, the near death and ultimate restructuring of the Big East. And although most of this was college football initiated, we understand all of that. It redrew the map of college athletics and college basketball forever, just as part of the Big East. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff here, but I don't want to just take the mic right away. So it's all you before I lay out some of the timeline and all this stuff. I will just start with this and take it wherever you want. For anyone listening that didn't follow much then, or is too young to have followed, or just didn't care much, the whole conference realignment thing in our industry was a practically every week and certainly every month, what's going to happen next story that was updated constantly. I mean, this was never ending, and there are other directions this could have gone that I'll get into, but this story is probably among the 3 or 4 longest stories in terms of a timeline as any that I have here on my list. What do you remember from it, GP? What are your takeaways?
So, like, I do hesitate to like just talk about these from my perspective all the time, because I'm just aware that I don't know. I hesitate to do it, but like I remember this through my perspective, like based on where I live. Memphis accepted an invitation to the Big East in February 2012. It was supposed to go into effect July 2013, and then the Catholic 7 voted to leave in December 2012. So there was this moment, and we touched on this throughout the series, but like I think it starts in 2003, where like conference realignment is like a thing that we're going to be talking about for the next 20 plus years.
Right.
And the University of Memphis is just dying to get anywhere other than what it is. And then it finally happens. Like, here's a quote from the president of the University of Memphis at the press conference. You know what she said, Dr. Shirley Rand? She said, "By golly, we did it."
Did you?
John Marinado was the Big East commissioner at the time.
Yes, forced to eventually resign, by the way.
Yeah, here's a quote from him. "It was our goal to get to 12 football playing members, and we've done that. So we're obviously pleased that we filled our primary objective." That was after adding the University of Memphis. And again, roughly 10 months after that, the Big East as we knew it, which was supposed to be football, like an all sports league,
yes,
is no more. Big East becomes a non-football league. That's the creation of the American Athletic Conference. Think of how many schools would be in different leagues right now if that thing didn't happen, if that vote didn't go down the way it went down in December 2012. To your point, that's why this is a big story. You cannot overstate the different places so many different athletic departments are in right now.
So many. I've got that in my notes too. It is a total redrawing of the conference map. Now, in my opinion, the actions from 2010 to 2013 are what laid the groundwork for like a story that's not going to be in my top 25, but is obviously very big. The 16 and 18 super conference realignments that took place in 23 and 24. Very, very big stories. But and the stuff that we talked about that was in the early part of this, in the 21 to 25 section of this ranking, when you had Boston College defecting and all the Big East and ACC stuff there. Also very important. This one's the most important to me because this one led to, these were the tectonic shifts that led to truly like the earthquake, major rumblings from 23 and 24. So let me walk our listeners through what exactly happened here. And this is even an abridged version, but I want to give people a real understanding of the domino effects that took place. Within about 24 hours of each other in the summer of 2010, Colorado left the Big 12 for the Pac-10, and that move wouldn't take place. A lot of these, when they happen, they don't take place materially. They don't join until a year later, as we understand. The next day, Nebraska left the Big 12 for the Big 10, okay? Those are the first dominoes that take place. Now, we're not going to go all the way down this rabbit hole, but the Pac-12, or the Pac-10, which will become the Pac-12, tried to convince Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State all to leave the Big 12 and make the first super conference 16-team league, more than a decade ago. It got really close. Texas wouldn't pull the trigger. The Big 12 almost died there. The Big 12 lived and died a dozen deaths over the course of 2.5, 3 years here, and somehow has managed, as we speak today, is going through its football media days. Congrats to the Big 12 conference. College athletics are better for having you here. So they don't get those schools. So Utah joins instead, and that's when the Pac-10 becomes a Pac-12 because Colorado joins. Okay, so that's one part. Then the rumblings are constant and never ending. For about a year after that, what's the Big 10 going to do? What's the Big 12 going to do? A&M and Missouri ultimately leave the Big 12 soon thereafter. And then the Big 12 salvaged itself by bringing in TCU and West Virginia. TCU we'll get back to in just a second, okay? So ironically enough, and this is all tied in, like the Big East stuff to me is as meaningful as anything else, but with what happened with the Big 12 there, GP, and we can just pause it here before I continue the timeline, getting TCU and West Virginia, but losing the schools you lost, losing Mizzou and losing A&M and all the fluctuation there, that was a problem for the Big 12's reputation and kind of like football might, but it actually aligned the stars, Parrish, for the Big 12 and men's basketball for the majority of the next decade to wind up being the top-rated league in the sport. How
about this? I'm just reading through more quotes.
Okay.
From John Marinado. With the addition of Memphis, I think we just solidified our position as being the best conference in the country in men's basketball. So just the way we were talking about all of these things, and then the carryover from all of it, like, still exists. As you know, we've just entered the era of revenue sharing in college athletics. That went into effect July 1st. A big topic of conversation has been about the inherent advantages schools without football they have advantages in terms of they don't have to pay football players. They can just focus on other things. Like, if UConn was in the Big East and playing Division I football, they would be probably committing more money to football than they otherwise would. Like, all of this stuff is just the trickle down, and everything else is just interesting to think about, because there are programs that are in a position right now to flourish, and they might not have been if all of this stuff more than a decade ago just goes down different ways.
Agreed. So let's continue it. November of 2012, Maryland and Rutgers announced they're leaving leagues for the Big Ten. Random personal note, I remember when this happened with Maryland because I was in a hotel interviewing Nate Walters. Remember our guy Nate Walters?
Of course.
I was interviewing him for a feature. South Dakota State played a game against, I guess it was Hofstra, who will make another appearance on this show in just a little bit. Stick around for more Hofstra talk. And I remember in that moment being like, because there was rumblings like 24, 48, 72 hours before it happened. It was like, Maryland's really going to leave the ACC? Like, this is going to happen? Sure enough, sure as hell, it happened on a November Saturday night, maybe, when the news broke. So Maryland, Rutgers, they're leaving. They go to the Big Ten. The move is done for TV money. Rutgers somehow being linked to the, quote, New York City market.
That's the best ever.
It's the best ever.
Somebody decided that by getting Rutgers, you own New York's television market. That's what somebody actually determined.
Okay, well, and that's the other thing, Parrish, is all of this is being done. Here's the wild part. To what you just mentioned, like, if this doesn't happen, what schools are in what conferences, what doesn't change. Remember, at this time, this is all being done for cable television money. This is why things like the Big Ten Network and Jim Delaney, as much, if not more than any other single person in college athletics, was, and I don't say this as a pejorative, it's just recognized in the industry that he was the primary person that really got the dominoes moving. The Big Ten Network, and Delaney was obviously the former Big Ten commissioner, the ACC Network, SEC Network, the ill-fated Pac-12 Network, which you might have once upon a time been able to find on a refrigerator at your local retailer. They came to exist because of all of this. They were chasing television money, and how much, 82 cents on the dollar could you make? It's crazy. The sobering thought is this: if conference commissioners and university presidents had, and easier said than done, but if they had waited 3 more years to see what the future of television would become with streaming and all of that, we probably still have the old Big East. Maryland may well still be in the ACC. Rutgers in that New York City market wouldn't be in the Big Ten.
You never take Rutgers under these circumstances.
Correct.
Never.
The American Athletic Conference conceivably never even exists. So for the people that have real, and we're going to circle back to the Big East in just a minute here, but the people that have never been able to resolve themselves around the idea of the new Big East, and they wish Syracuse and UConn and Georgetown were all in the same conference. They wish Pitt was not in the ACC back in the Big East. I'm telling you, if there had been more patience and not chasing this cable TV money in 2010, 2011, 2012, we could conceivably maybe be living in that reality now, while still understanding that conference realignment on some level is always going to be inevitable. But it is a very interesting what could it have been. But it's just, if you go back to November of 2012, just the gears in motion with college athletics, there was no slowing the stuff down. As I don't know, ill-conceived as it could have been, because I also maintain, Parrish, as we transition to some of the Big East stuff here, this was also the period where geography as like a central tenet of constructing a conference started to get pushed to the side. Like up until this point, that was always a major part of what builds a conference. And all of this stuff is when that went out the window. Okay, now to the Big East. Mm-hmm. This is almost lost to the sands of time. I know you're aware of this, but for our audience's sake, the Big East, as you mentioned, they were planning to morph into a big-time football conference. They invited TCU in November of 2010. So this is before the Maryland Rutgers stuff that we mentioned before, most of the stuff. In November of 2010, the Big East announced, and TCU confirmed it, that TCU would be joining the league. Why did this happen? Because Jamie Dixon, then the coach at Pitt, went to go see his alma mater, TCU, where he obviously coaches now. He goes and he speaks to then TCU athletic director Chris Del Conte and basically floats the idea. It gets incepted into Del Conte's brain. It becomes this idea, and it blows up into something that has real potential. There's a plan to have UCF join the Big East, obviously Memphis. A lot of this stuff eventually caves in and falls in on itself. The reason why the Big East wound up even splitting is because Big East presidents, after initially approving a plan, saw how much money the Pac-12 was poised to get with its cable television network and said, wait a second, we're not getting as much as we can here. Let's just poo-poo this idea. The brutal irony to all of this is that exact thinking with the Big East that caused the Big East to cave in on itself would infect Pac-12 presidents a little more than a decade later and lead to the dissolvement and almost near eradication of the Pac-12 under Commissioner Larry Scott. Just wild how those things kind of attached to each other and came and bent back around there. So in 2012, West Virginia leaves for the Big 12, leaves the Big East. In 2013, that's when the calving really happens. Syracuse, ND, Pitt to the ACC. Football playing Big East schools rebrand as the Americans. That's UConn, Louisville, Cincinnati, Rutgers. Rutgers for only 1 year. Yes, they were in the American. Man, yes. Oh, man. And by the way, I got a little more here, GP. I assume you went into the Wikipedia stuff on this as well. All of these conferences have chunky Wikipedia pages just about the realignment from like 2010 to 2013. It's wild. South Florida's there. Also in 2013, the Big East survives and gets its branding with the Catholic 7, and they hope to keep the legacy alive. They ultimately went out with that because they keep the branding name. So Providence, St. John, Seton Hall, Nova, Georgetown, Marquette, DePaul. They recruit Creighton, Butler, Xavier into the league. They stabilize the only or the best basketball first conference in college basketball. The American is formed. And it's viewed as like a near power conference, but viewed by many schools as like a halfway house, which explains why the league is where it is today from a basketball sense. ACC gets Notre Dame, Pitt, Syracuse. It maneuvers to take Louisville a year later after they lost Maryland to the Big Ten. And as for the Big East, all in all, it's done pretty well for itself. It loses UConn in the short term, but gets it back. The league has had 4 teams in its ranks win a national title, earned an average of 5 NCAA tournament bids since it rebranded and reformed as the 10 and then 11 team league. And it has ranked either second or third in KenPom in 7 of the 12 seasons since this reformation happened there. There were other downstream effects with Mountain West, et cetera, et cetera. We won't get into those. But yeah, man, this was a huge story. Even though I initially struggled with where to put it, I landed on it here because I don't think you can make the case convincingly that this isn't one of the 10 most important stories in college sports, let alone college basketball over the past 25 years.
Yeah, it literally led to the creation of new leagues, led to the diminishment of other leagues, led to all sorts of movement. The American Athletic Conference, by the way, it starts in 2014. The members
give me the roster right now. Let's blow some minds.
Louisville, Cincinnati, Connecticut, SMU, Memphis, Houston, Rutgers, Temple, UCF, South Florida. If that were still the league,
it's a solid league.
Dude,
it's a solid league.
Okay, so right now Louisville's going to be preseason ranked. Connecticut, we know that story. Houston, we know that story. You know, Memphis is Memphis. Like that's a Rutgers. We would have just had Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper in the AAC, along with Liam McNeely. Liam McNeely, Ace Bailey, and Dylan Harper could have all played in the AAC last year if we just kept this thing together. Now, of those 10 schools, only 3 remain. 7 have moved on to bigger and better things. The only 3 left in this neighborhood that was never the best neighborhood, but was like a much better neighborhood then than it is now. Like we all know these neighborhoods. You're like, oh yeah, this is a nice neighborhood. You look up 15 years later, you're like, man, this neighborhood is run down. all the people that got promotions at work moved out.
Yep.
And now it's just us still making what we were making 15 years ago. That's what the AAC is. The only 3 schools left in it, Memphis, Temple, and USF. Every other school in that league has moved on to something bigger.
Those are natural bedfellows, by the way. Memphis, Temple, and USF. God.
If you ever want to understand why Memphis fans are like bordering on suicide down here, it's because all of this should have been different. All of this could have been different, and it just is stuck in the AAC.
What a saga. And and the effects are still felt this day. So many ways this could have gone. It went the way it went. We are where we are. We got to move on to number 8. But first, I think we need a break. Here's a word from our partners.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Okay, Norlander, give me number 8, and this is one I know you've previously written like 40,000 words on this, so unload.
I think this is either the longest or second. It's definitely one of the 3 longest stories I've ever written for CBS Sports. It's George Mason becoming the first mid-major to ever make the Final Four. George Mason was a 7-4 team that turned into a 27-8 crew that went to the national semis, lost to Florida, and pulled off an all-time Cinderella season. Please, if you're at all remotely interested, very proud of the story I did there, and I interviewed I think a dozen plus people for this thing. I wrote on the occasion of the 10-year anniversary in 2016, did a huge takeout and look back, and it was just there are so many fun details about the entire season. I'll mention a few of them here, but there's a lot that I'm not going to mention. And if you're remotely interested in March Madness lore or want to go relive that Mason team, set aside 40 minutes and pull it up a read here on a summer night. How about this? A 23-7 team gets in as an at-large. Not just that, it's 2006. The 11th ranked team at Ken Pom sent 2 teams with 14 combined losses to the NCAA tournament, Parrish. That is unfortunately, but understandably, inconceivable today.
Would George Mason or a school like George Mason get an at-large bid today with or without tournament expansion?
Yeah, let's just go into the guys of 68 teams. And randomly on that note, if you're listening to this in real time, whenever we have an update on that, which we should by the end of the week, we will hop on and we will give you an episode on that. So we have been slow on news, but we will give you that news as it develops here later this week. I don't believe so. In 2006, just to run it down here, the things that got Mason into the tournament, broadly speaking, one, we were not in the net era. We were in kind of the nascent RPI era. Even like RPI, for as flawed of a metric as that was, even then to a certain extent, it was being gamed and not really fully understood. Like the selection committee in 2006, certainly 2 or 3 stages of evolution away from where it is now. I'm looking at the schedule. What George Mason's best wins that season were at Wichita State in bracket busters, something that no longer exists. But if it didn't exist in 2006, George Mason is not getting into the tournament because it needed that road win against a high-level team. At that point, Wichita State was like a top 30 team in the country. It had that. And in terms of other high-level wins, there's nothing. There are some good wins in league play, like they won at VCU. That's solid. They beat a good UNC. UNC Wilmington was good that season. Hofstra was at the top of the league. It did not win against Hofstra. In fact, I remember listening to Mike and the Mad Dog. And good afternoon, everybody. I remember them. Now, part of this is being New York City radio guys. I remember them the Monday after Selection Sunday, just going for 2 hours on why Hofstra deserved to be in over George Mason. Because, Hofstra beat Mason twice in the weeks leading up to Selection Sunday. So to your point, no, I don't think they would have gotten in. And this is a quick little clip from my article. Actually, particularly, I pulled this from Mason even getting in. They get in, And they apparently were not the last team in. So this is what I reported on almost a decade ago. Quote, Packer and Nance ran through our non-conference schedule on the air, basically saying we shouldn't be in, end quote, assistant Chris Caputo said. What made matters more interesting and controversial was who served on the selection committee that year. George Mason's athletic director, Tom O'Connor, was part of the process, as was Virginia athletic director Craig Littlepage, a longtime friend of Jim Larenega's, dating back to their time as assistants at Virginia in the mid-1980s. Littlepage was chair of the committee that season. Littlepage told me then, quote, it was a fairly unremarkable selection weekend in that regard. George Mason was not subject to any more or less scrutiny than any at-large teams. And, quote, Littlepage said he wasn't certain whether or not Mason was the last team included, but according to his memory, the Patriots were not the final at-large team above the cut. Quote, there were some that did not vote Mason to get in, Littlepage added, end quote. And then Gabe Norwood, who was on that team, remembers 4 stages of reaction: joy, relief, celebration, and then the excitement when we saw the bracket. We saw that these were winnable games for us. It wasn't like we were in and that was good enough, end quote. So before we get to the run here, just the very nature of Mason even getting into the tournament and there being a little bit of controversy there. And then they're staring down Michigan State in their first game. And then, okay, if you pull that off, it's North Carolina coming off a national championship the year before, a really, really good team. They were not one of these trendy, chic, okay, this is an 11 seed. That's a trendy pick to beat a 6 seed. That was not the case whatsoever. They were largely an unknown team with their one big moment happening with the win at Wichita State and Bracket Busters, which, true to form, like that was a very, very, very important win.
There's nothing about them that made you go, keep an eye on them. They look like the type of team that can make a run in the tournament. They hadn't beaten many good teams, even multiple good teams. And good is subjective, but you understand what I mean. It wasn't like they were on some long winning streak. We had just watched them cut nets during championship week. They got eliminated from a mid-major tournament. They were 23-7 on Selection Sunday. But they were 25th at KenPom pre-tournament. And that, in this era, that might have helped them.
Good. Now, but think KenPom doesn't, well, it exists, but almost no one knows what KenPom is in 2006. So that, like, this was not entering into the selection committee's thought process whatsoever.
Yeah, so they get in, they get the 11 seed, and then it's just a magical run that culminates with that victory over UConn. I mean, that's a UConn team that's got, you'll recognize some of these names: Rudy Gay, Hilton Armstrong, Marcus Williams, Josh Boone, Denham Brown. And, you know, this comes after they had already beat Michigan State in the opener, then North Carolina.
Well, they beat Michigan State by 10, and they didn't have Tony Skinn, now the coach, by the way.
Now the coach.
Skinn punched a Hofstra player in the groin. Real quick on this, because this was like, if you go read the story, you kind of get a little more layers into like sort of how unlikely the whole thing was. Skinn punched a Hofstra player in the groin. No one really knew that he did it, but it got caught by a local camera guy, and then Skinn admitted it. And he could have skated, never said a thing, and played in the Michigan State game, but he owned up to it. He was a senior. Larenega suspends him for the Michigan State game. In effect, it's a move that I even have it. I link back in the story. Like Mike Krzyzewski said in 2006, I wouldn't have done that. Like, this is a senior. It's very likely the last game of his career here in the CAA tournament where they lose. Like, are you going to win your first NCAA tournament game? He suspends them. They beat Michigan State by 10 anyway, GP. And then they play 3-seed Roy Williams. Again, I mentioned before, they had won the Natty the year before. They beat him by 5. And they do that after fall. This is the things that are forgotten all this time later. Carolina was up on George Mason 16-2. 16-2 to start that game. Jai Lewis, let's remember a dude. He said that was a scare. I believe in the first 4 minutes of that game, our season was over, end quote. It wasn't. They pulled it off. Then they beat Wichita State in the Sweet 16. One quick quote from that, and then I want to dive into the UConn stuff. Consider 2 things. One, consider the unlikely coincidence, and which benefited Mason. They had beaten Wichita State 5 weeks earlier in Bracket Busters. This kind of matchup is really not supposed to happen. So they were benefited by getting that team again. And now, after winning at Wichita State, where are they playing? They're in Washington, D.C. They're a short drive away from Fairfax, where George Mason is based. And so Scott Cherry, who was an assistant on that squad, told me back then, he said, that game was over before it even started. We didn't even have to tell them anything. Wichita State walked into that building, and you could see the looks on their faces. They knew they were in trouble, end quote. And then we get to the Elite Eight win over UConn in overtime, which I maintain is one of the 3 or 4 best Elite Eight games in history. In part, it's not just the David and Goliath. It's not just that. It is the fact that when you watch the game, go back and watch in an abridged version of it. Like, YouTube has these amazing compilations where, they boil it down to 28 minutes. They get rid of all the riffraff and all that. It is extremely well played. It's a lot like the Kentucky-Wichita State game that would wind up happening, 8 years later in the second round with undefeated Wichita State. The UConn versus Mason game is beautifully played. And yeah, I don't know. GP, what were your thoughts? What do you remember? I got a couple notes, but I want to send it back to you. I was at home watching with my parents and my brothers. And one of the last memories for me of just following the sport and not covering it. This is March of 2006. I would start my independent college basketball website in November of 2007. So this is one of the last memories I have of purely enjoying the sport of college basketball from a removed standpoint and not being an aspiring writer or anything like that. I hesitate to ask, but I have to ask nonetheless. Do you remember where you were? What was that? Do you remember what the circumstances around you either watching this game, the lead up to it, anything about it?
I was on a plane. Didn't see any of it.
Oh my God.
This was March.
Dude, that's terrible. This is one of the best tournament games ever, and you were on a plane.
And it was March 2006. So you ain't streaming it. All right.
Shot.
And you're not even Twittering it.
Nope. Twitter didn't. I don't believe Twitter existed when this game happened. Twitter was invented in 2006. I don't know if it was online when this game happened, and it sure as hell wasn't. Yeah,
I think sometimes when I look at my Twitter account, it'll say joined in 2009. I think I joined in 2009.
Yeah, so did I. That's when it started to really catch on.
Right.
For the first 2 years of Twitter's existence, basically no one was.
I remember people would say,
there was no track.
I remember, we're just so stupid. We have no vision whatsoever. Like us normal humans, we have no vision. Because this is what I remember thinking. Why am I just going to jump on a website and tell people I just had pizza for lunch? What's the point? That was my concept of Twitter.
Well, that was the conceit with Twitter for a good year after it caught fire.
I just remember people going okay, hey, I had a strawberry shortcake today.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking in on limited characters. I was like, what is this stupid?
Who knew what it could become?
Who knew? Seriously, who knew?
I know.
Who knew what it would become? So this is March 2006. I get hired at CBS in July 2006. Yeah. I'm still at the Commercial Appeal. Yes. I am flying home from San Francisco because the day prior is when UCLA beat Memphis, and
there we go.
To advance to the Final Four, and that happened on a Saturday. So I guess Adam Morrison's career ends on that Thursday. We get Memphis, UCLA on that Saturday. I'm flying home on Sunday. I just remember I do remember having Wi-Fi. I remember following this on the plane.
Really?
I remember being aware of it on the plane somehow. Whether it was Wi-Fi.
I'm not saying you're lying. I'm going to Google it. Was Wi-Fi available on airplanes?
Yeah, look it up. And I promise you I'm not lying. I might just be misremembering. You are, but
if you would have asked me to broadly guess what year was Wi-Fi first available on an airplane, I would say I don't know, 2009. But
right. Yeah. And you might be right. I don't know. I have a memory, and the memory could be we're starting to land. And so now I'm starting to hit a spot where I can pick up stuff. I just remember going, oh wow, is George Mason going to win this game? Oh my God, what's going? But I didn't see any of it. I refreshed something and it was final score. George Mason beats UConn. I guess it was 86-84 in overtime, but live, I didn't see a single second of it. I was on an airplane.
There's a passenger Wi-Fi on airplanes Wikipedia entry. This is insane. As of January 2003, Lufthansa, the German airline, became the first airline globally to provide in-flight internet service. I think scrolling through here, generally speaking, it caught on in the year or two after that. So yes, very conceivable. Your memory is abiding by you here, and you did follow this on Wi-Fi in March of 2006.
I remember finding out who won this game either on my phone or on my computer while sitting in a plane seat. That's a fact. However I did it, that part's true. I went back and watched it last night. And you mentioned Jai Lewis earlier. Oh, buddy.
Oh, he was a problem.
Oh, my God. So think about, and I totally forgot about the Tony Skinn Hofstra stuff and the suspension, but that is crazy. That could have ended his career.
Yes. It's very conceivable. And they won by 10 against Michigan State. But
okay, and keep in mind, this isn't like John Shire suspends some Duke player for the
Caleb
round of
Foster.
16.
Just say like last season's team, like Caleb Foster. It's not that. Like Tony Skinn, starting point guard, man. Suspended that dude.
Yeah, but what I even mean is like, if you are Duke and you feel like you got to suspend somebody for your round 1 game, you're probably playing in the second round.
Fair. Also, yeah, right. Yes.
Unless you run into
Unless you're playing like
VCU
or Lehigh or something like that.
Lehigh, right? One of those. But like,
Mercer,
you can reasonably assume we're going to the next round. Your college career does not end here. For all intents and purposes, the most reasonable thing to assume is that Tony Skinn's college career ended prior to the NCAA tournament. Where does his life go?
Mm-hmm.
He's the head coach of George Mason right now.
Tony Skinn has earned every bit of it, but it's not an unfair thing to speculate. Like if Mason had never made the Final Four, would Tony Skinn be the coach of George Mason? I don't know, but that's
I'll take it. Let me take it back a week or 2, whatever. You'll get the point.
Yeah.
If the committee doesn't controversially put them in the field,
I know.
Where is Tony Skinn's life today? Yeah. If he is suspended for the opening game and they lose to Michigan State, where is his life today? Because I am not insisting or even implying the only reason he's a George Mason coach is because he played on a Final Four team, but that's a part of his story. I mean, that's definitely a part. Like, I've seen the Tony Skinn CBS Sports Network profile like 7 times. That's a part of the story. All right. So you just, with him, you go, okay, man, if they don't go on this run or even win that first game, we are looking like, think about the way we look back at, to the extent that we do, but like, I don't like the way RJ Lewis's career ended. Like it ain't up to me and I'll sleep okay at night, but I just didn't like that. Just buried on the bench. And I'm not even saying it was wrong, although I would have never done it. But I'm not saying it's wrong.
What you're saying is RJ Lewis will never one day become the head coach of St. John's, and that's fair.
I think it is probably fair to assume RJ Lewis will never be a head coach at St. John's. But like, that was bad. That was just on the bench, star player on the bench, career over. I just didn't like that visual. This would have been even worse. You don't even get to play. So you can do that with Tony Skinn and then go to Jai Lewis. He's at the free throw line. 2-point lead, 6.1 seconds left. He's got 2 free throws. He misses both of them. At the other end, Denham Brown got a clean look at a 3.
Still waiting for that shot to go in. The most surprising non-make I think I've ever watched as it was
just
happening.
Skipped off he just a little too strong and skipped off the rim.
Every fiber of my being told me that UConn would not be losing this game and that shot was going in. The Cinderella story was going to end. Keep in mind, although Duke was #1 overall seed in this tournament, UConn was the most popular pick to win the national title. It was considered the most talented team, the scariest team, everything about it. Even though Mason had the game in his backyard, UConn was expected to show up and dominate and run it. In fact, again, go read the story if you have time. All these players recall about how dismissive UConn was collectively as a team of Mason. Some of that might have been invented, but certainly some of it felt real to them. And the most surprising thing about it all is as you run through the end of this game, GP, you wouldn't know it unless I didn't know until they told me. And unless you're like really locked in on the game, Mason played its starters for the final 15 and a half minutes of game time in this game, man. And they kept running the same play. It was called 3. They just kept running it because UConn didn't want to double team Lewis. Because they did it once, and then someone came off the play, hit a 3, and then Calhoun said, we're not doing that anymore. Because Jai Lewis was a problem, man. And that mystery is just just an amazing, amazing game, an amazing moment, an amazing run, GP.
Yeah, like if Denham Brown makes that shot, like we remember all of this differently.
Yeah, it's still an amazing all-time run.
It's still an amazing run, but like Jai Lewis is the guy who missed the free. How about this? I didn't even remember that there was 2 missed free throws with like 6.1 seconds left in that moment. But had Denham Brown made that shot, that is something you would remember for a long time. Well, you remember Mason, like they had it, and then they missed the 2 free throws. What was the guy's name? Lewis. Yeah, Jai Lewis. Missed the 2 free throws, and then Denham Brown buried it at the buzzer. Game over. Fun run, but my God, make 1 free throw, bro, and you're in overtime. Make both of them, and you're in the Final Four. It would be that type of story. Instead, he gets to go back and celebrate a banner. It's just like, that's life, man. Life is just like that.
It is. It is just the type of story that we cherish. And yeah, again, it's high on this list because it was the first time a school at this level proved that you could win 4 in March. It just had not been done. We had Cinderella runs, had some amazing stuff. Amazing stuff was still to come. Steph Curry's team, they didn't win 4, but they won 3. And we would obviously see what would come with Butler, with Wichita State, with Loyola Chicago, go on down the list. VCU, FAU. We've seen this. Mason was the team that showed it was possible. There's some great stuff in the story about how Larinaga would fire up the team with this corny stuff. These locker room speeches, just a ton of fun. And really, really cool to go back and relive on that. So yeah, it was a joy. You got anything else? We still got 2 more.
I would just, and you touched on this, but to me, that's their lasting legacy. That's why they'll be remembered forever by people who talk about this stuff. Subsequently, we have had Loyola Chicago, Butler twice, VCU. Like a quote unquote mid-major getting to the Final Four is like it's not that crazy of a. I mean, it's always a crazy story, but like we've seen it. But we had never seen it before this one. They're the first, and that's why they matter. Perhaps not more than any of the others, but they'll always have their place in history.
Number 7 on the list, North Carolina ends Coach K. Kind of kills his career twice with the last game at Cameron being a UNC win, and then obviously the win in the 2022 Final Four. I was in the building for both of these results. The reason why I'm putting it this high on the list, reasons. One, you have a coach who does John Wood, in all due respect, second best coach in UCLA history. Like he's got a really, really strong claim, but you can make a convincing case that Mike Krzyzewski is the greatest coach in the history of men's Division I college basketball. And so it's the end of his career and everything that was attached to it. And this farewell tour, we knew for the entire season, all of this stuff. So let's go do game by game here. First, it's Cameron. On this podcast.
Yeah, that is so funny to me. I meant to go back and listen to that episode, or at least a part of it, because I remember the way I remembered at least, we talked about this. Yeah. And we're just talking. It's like it's gonna be a cool scene, and like Christian Laettner's gonna,
but it won't be a good game. I was going because it was Coach K's last game at Cameron. Like you gotta go, you gotta see that scene. We weren't expecting a good game.
No, like UNC was 22-8. Duke was awesome. Duke was an 11-point favorite. And then at some point, I think it was you were just sort of like wondering aloud, like what if they went in there and won the game? And we're like, well, that'd be hilarious. But like, come on, man. You've been paying attention? Like they ain't going in there. They're not going in there and winning that game. Duke was 26-4 heading into that game with a 20-point victory at North Carolina.
Yes.
So that to me,
I believe I also asked you. I said, what would Kay have to do to get thrown out of this?
Piss on her rep.
We weren't even sure that would prompt it, to be honest. That's where the pod drifted off to.
Looking back on it, and we've touched on this before, but I think they just made it too big. They made it too big.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
the players felt the weight of it, and the North Carolina players felt nothing but a free shot at history. Like nobody think, it was you hear this kind of nonsense from players all the time, but like in this case, it was actually true. Nobody believed we could do it. It's like, yeah, you're right. We really didn't, we really didn't believe you were going to do that. It didn't even occur to us to spend 5 minutes on it on the podcast up until like it just sort of randomly got brought up. And then they went and did it. And then the post-game scene was just, everything about it was awkward and strange.
Gosh, everyone wanted to cheer. Kay was pissed. Everyone be quiet. It's unacceptable. Today was unacceptable. His exact quote was, everyone be quiet. Let me just say it's unacceptable. Today was unacceptable. But the season has been very acceptable. And I'll tell you, the season isn't over, end quote. No, it was not, but there was more to come. But yes, there were I think close to 90 former Duke players that were in the building. And it had this homecoming basketball high school gym feel to it. And I remember looking over near the end of that game and seeing those faces. I just remember seeing Reddick over there and being like, this is the strangest scene ever, man. Carolina is going to do this. Jerry Seinfeld, Adam Silver, Dirk Nowitzki. I remember bumping into Dirk in the greater Duke Hall of Fame area that's adjacent to Cameron. But just Kyler Murray, they did make it too big. How could you not make it big? But yeah, Carolina just they played without any kind of pressure and they romped them 94-81, man. Just one of the all-time moments in the history of the rivalry. And then what makes this story rank so high is the fact that they played each other again for the first time in the tournament at the Final Four on the biggest stage in New Orleans, everything that's just attached to this. Think there's reports of someone with the Guster sticker on a laptop might have also played a part in the first half of that game. We can move on.
Is that the first time and last time you were told we got to do something with your computer?
Yeah, that's pretty much yes. It reached fever pitch. Like it was that was surreal, and it truly did reach a point like near the end of the first half where I was like, I think I need to do something about this because I have my text messages linked to my laptop and I'm getting like text like every 3 seconds. I'm like, I gotta lock in on the game here. Anyway,
they got to win a Diddy sticker. That'd have been something.
Let's keep it moving. So,
you dodged a bullet there.
North Carolina, it pulls off this upset, and it does it with Caleb Love, 28 points. He hits this all-timer of a shot in the final minute of the game. I wrote, in the final 44 seconds, the point guard seized the game in his hands, 2 rebounds, 6 points, and delivered a closing performance that will fit alongside another Tar Heel, Michael Jordan, who became a legend in this building 40 years ago. I guess that's not accurate, by the way, because it was same building. It was same building. I'm thinking Houston, which had 2 different buildings there. Love's 3-pointer with 24.8 to go from the top of the key put UNC up 78-74. I also, another reason why this was such a big deal, and it was lower on the list, and this is probably somewhat forgotten now, 3 years later. This was our first Final Four that was proper since 2019. There was no 20 tournament. 21 was the bubble. So 2022 was like the return to everything. And we got this. We got the blue blood Final Four. These two, Kansas and Nova. And for Mike Krzyzewski to have this all-time incredible career, make it to even get to your final year and have your career end in this Final Four, which, oh, by the way, we didn't know it at the time, but so did Jay Wright. 2 Hall of Famers saw their careers end in that stage in the national semifinals on that same night. You are faced up against your blood rival, the greatest rivalry, I would say in college athletics. I give full room for the Ohio State, Michigans, and Auburn, Alabamas. I get all that. But Duke, Carolina have played more frequently, are closer to each other geographically, have produced more pros, like the number of championships, Final Fours, all of it. It still is amazing to me, Parrish, that the universe winked at us in this kind of way and gave us this matchup again. And then when you would think that a top-seeded Duke team going against a Carolina team that solidified its NCAA tournament bona fides by winning at Cameron, it was a bubble team going into that game, gets an 8 seed, plays its way into the title game. And we've gone over why some of that was, they got the benefit of playing in that region and knocked off St. Peter's to get there. They do it again. It's a really good game. It's an all-timer. And the rivalry will never be the same because of it. It was an all-time classic, and just, it's incredible that we were given this. This is just an all-time treat. And I know it's a sore spot for obviously Duke fans, but Carolina fans started this episode with a not so good memory. I know you didn't win the title in 22, but it was a house money situation. We give you a little love on the same show here.
Obviously, big story, worthy of the top 10 of this list, particularly if we're not even going to include the time Bob Knight was terminated at Indiana. But I ask this from an honest place.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, and it's only been a few years, but it's in our rearview mirror now. It felt like oh my God, poor K. Lose your last game in Cameron, have your career ended by North Carolina. How are you going to live with this? Looking back on it, how big of a deal is it?
I still think it's a pretty damn big deal.
Do you think it eats at him? Do you think he thinks about it every day, just for a second, but it pops into his head?
Ooh, that's a good question. Does losing one of these 2 games pop into Mike Krzyzewski's mind every day? I would not say every day, every week, absolutely.
Because I think about this sometimes in my own life. There are things, like not bad memories, but just like things, like not great things that have happened in my life. I'm not trying to get over dramatic or anything, but like I notice they just pop into my, and I'm like, why am I thinking about that today? Like it could just be like somebody close to you died, and you're just like, and it's just like hits you, and it's just like every day. And then you just notice after some point, it's like, wow, okay, I don't remember thinking about that yesterday. That's interesting. It's starting to slip a little bit. I just wonder if this is the type of thing that it just bothers him, or if it's the type of thing that feels massive and disappointing and deflating, and I'll never get over this in the moment. But then you look up and you're able to look at your career more broadly and recognize I had arguably the greatest college coaching career of all time. It didn't end the way I wanted, but that hurt is overwhelmed by all the success for decades. Or does it still that hurt? Just like, I cannot believe it ended like
Gotta be
that.
some of that. I mean,
I think there's a mix probably because,
Yeah.
but here's my larger point. We as people are always so consumed with how something's supposed to end. Oh, he needs to win it all and then walk away, or he needs to walk away now before he comes back and ruins his legacy. And yet we rarely remember how anything ends. We think we'll remember it forever. Trivia time.
Depends. Like with the stuff that doesn't end well, we remember. Like,
oh, yeah, okay, but like here's my point.
Game of Thrones and Seinfeld had terrible finales, and no,
I get that. Here's my point. Like, what was John Thompson's last game at Georgetown?
Good call.
Here's the thing. I'm not even trying to catch you off guard or make you look dumb. I have no idea either.
The year. I think the year was 99, maybe.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Does anybody outside of
right.
Georgetown people remember anything about it?
Right.
Like, do you remember? And this one was pretty recent, but like Jim Boeheim's final game.
I just because the circumstances around it were very weird in the ACC tournament when he didn't even acknowledge the retirement. But yeah, I know what you're saying. But
yeah. We rarely remember Michael Jordan's career. I mean, I know it was with the Wizards, but I don't remember the final shot he took.
Thompson was 99, by the way. Georgetown was 14-16 that year. Lost in what I'm presuming was the NIT to Princeton. If you're
when I think of John Thompson, that has never popped into my head.
Nor should it.
Never. I had no idea his last season was below 500, and it has never popped into my head. Like
trivia time. Who succeeded John Thompson?
Craig Escher.
There we go. And you remember why? Because of the mustache. That's right.
And he was a longtime assistant, right?
Yeah, of course.
But yes, the mustache. I do remember the mustache. I think we get caught up on how things end, and once you get a few years away from it, you don't really remember it, with few exceptions. I know there are some exceptions, but they're not as many as we think. And this is a perfect split in the middle of it, what we're talking about, because you will remember this. You will always remember how K's career ended.
Mm-hmm.
But my point is, you don't usually remember how things end, because once you get to a place where you can look back on the totality of it, you tend to remember the good more than the bad. Think of it as a vacation. Vacations are roller coasters, ups and downs, particularly with little kids. You get 2 years removed from it. There has never been a vacation where I didn't say, I don't know if I'll ever do this again. I don't know if I'll ever do this again. Get me a month removed from it and bump into me at the coffee shop. GP, saw your family in the Bahamas. What do you think? Man, we had a blast. What are you talking about? Oh my God, it was beautiful. I can't wait to go back. You just remember the good parts. And I think looking back on K's career, we will mostly remember the good parts and not necessarily how it ended, but we will remember on some level how it ended forever.
And let's move on, but it is objectively hilarious that for the first half of that game, his face was planted directly in front of a huge Gus for Lever stick. It's objectively amazing.
You better be glad you weren't in 2022 a diehard Diddy fan, because if you that'd have been something.
Just time for number 6.
Replace the Guster sticker with a Diddy sticker, and you got a lot of things. You got a lot of things to answer for these days.
All right, number 6.
You have to explain yourself.
Number 6. The history-making element of this one is why it is number 6 on the list. And it is the ultimate NCAA tournament redemption story. We waited years and years and years and years for a 16 seed to beat a 1. In 2018, it finally happened. Virginia fell to UMBC. And the next year, Virginia came back and won the damn national championship. This is in some ways connected to what you mentioned with Carolina doing it with Villanova, but this is even more extreme, obviously. Virginia was 31-2 and the overall number 1 seed with by far the best defense in the sport in 2018. UMBC had one previous NCAA tournament appearance, was obviously a completely unknown program. People couldn't have told you what UMBC stood for then. They probably can't even tell you for the most part if you're not in the Maryland, Baltimore County area right now. They can't even give you what the acronym stands for. It was Friday, March 16th. It was the 7 p.m. window. I was in Pittsburgh covering the likes of Duke, Trae Young in Oklahoma, Dan Hurley's last season with Rhode Island, all of that. I'll never forget the final score. It was 74-54. Before we get to the other half of the story, Virginia winning the national title, let's just go into this real quick here, because I was at the media hotel one of those deals where this was an off day. So my games were Thursday, Saturday. UMBC was a Friday night. So there was media stuff done earlier in the day. And I guess I think I went out for an early-ish dinner, got back, and it was halftime of this game. And then I'm in the lobby, some media luminaries, Eamon Brennan, Pat Forty, Jeff Goodman was there, Dana O'Neill. A bunch of us were there watching. And like UMBC has the lead, and it goes from like, all right, when's Virginia going to get its act together to, I want to say with like 10 minutes to go, it was, oh, this is going to happen, and it's going to be the biggest story in sports for the next 24 hours at least. So I remember before the game even ended, I went upstairs. Parrish, I want to say that I recorded the podcast by myself on this episode. Maybe you hopped on, but I want to say I did. Anyone who is a super diehard and can remember this stuff specifically, hit us and let us know. But I want to say maybe you were on it. I don't know. I remember.
I don't know. I know I was in studio that night at CBS Sports Network.
So
I was in the broadcast center.
So I think you were in studio too late. This game ends at call it 9:15 Eastern, and then this might have been the first instance of the podcast doing a true. Maybe we probably had emergency episodes before this, but definitely this has got to go out as soon as possible because we just had a 16-over-1 for the first time ever, and it was the number 1 overall seed, and it was Virginia, which was highly criticized for the way that it played its style of ball. I mentioned Pat Forty. If he wasn't, maybe he's jumping into my mind because if he wasn't in the hotel, he wrote a devastating column about Tony Bennett after this happened. And they blew him out, man. Virginia was 4 of 22 from 3, only 4 of 8 from the line. Crucially, did not have DeAndre Hunter in this game due to injury. UMBC was 12 of 24 from the field. Jarius Lyles, KJ Morrow, shouts to you, the 2 big standout players from this. It was world rattling. I remember writing a column that night. And the story is number 6 on the list because how it's the setup for the payoff a year later. But before we get to that, you were in studio, so obviously most of your memory is going to be tied to watching this in the bullpen there in Midtown Manhattan. But any takeaways or just remembrances of UMBC making history that night in 2018?
I do think the point Pat made is right, which is if you're trying to look for the most obvious explanation for how something like this could happen, number 1 defense in America, number 1 team in America becomes the first team in the history of the sport to lose to a 16 seed, at least the first 1 seed in the history of sport to lose to a 16 seed. I guess another 16 seed has lost to a 16 in the first 4, but you get the point.
Yeah.
It's the pace at which they played. Think about this in terms of a series. If you are the inferior team in a series, you don't even want a series. Let's just play 1 game and see if I can get lucky. You'd rather play a best of 3 than a best of 5. You'd rather play a best of 5 than a best of 7. The longer this thing drags out, that's where talent should take over. Think of it in golf, anything. The longer we play, the better players should win. Shorten it. Now I got a shot. You put me on a golf course with somebody who is obviously better at golf than me, I can't beat them over 18 holes. Could I beat them on 1? Yeah, I could beat them on 1. Could I beat them best, at the first 3 holes? Maybe. But over 18? No, it's too much time. When you play at that pace, you limit possessions. You make the game tighter than it otherwise would be based on the talent discrepancy between the 2 rosters. I buy that. That is among the things that happen to them. But don't ever forget, this is not like they, and they didn't just get edged at the buzzer.
It
was tied at the half, and then they got blown out.
Demolished.
It was tied at the half, and then UMBC opens on a 17-3 run and never really slowed down. They outscore them 53-33 in the final 20 minutes. Virginia was the number 1 defense in the country at KenPom, and coming into that game was averaging giving up 53 points per game. And they gave up 53 points in the second half to a team ranked 188th at KenPom. Insane. That's my main memory. We're sitting in studio, and it wasn't like with UConn George Mason. We just talked about that. It was like, ooh, don't leave. Don't leave. You don't know how this is going to end. And you still just consistently think, I say this with having it.
You didn't experience this. You were on a plane with a Wi-Fi. Continue.
I say all this while acknowledging I didn't watch it live, but I remember following it. And you just assume because this is the way you kind of pull it out. UConn will pull it out. UConn will pull it out. Up until UConn didn't pull it out, you kind of assumed UConn would. We didn't even get to experience this that way because it was like, oh my God, history is really about to happen. And it was like we had 20 minutes of real time to just sort of prepare for. At the buzzer, history will be made. This is not going to be a buzzer beater. This is not going to, and Tony Bennett takes a timeout with 14 seconds to play, and Virginia's going to have a shot. They are getting run off the court by a 16 seed. History is going to be made. And so I remember that. And then I remember at the Final Four, Tony was voted like National Coach of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a ceremony for that. So he was there. And we were live on CBS Sports HQ at the time. And a producer or somebody politely went over and was like, hey, congratulations on the award. And we'd love to get you to pop on set if you can. And he was like, he very respectfully was just like, I don't think so. And I don't want to speak for him, but it was almost like he felt, this is the way it played to me, like he felt almost embarrassed. Like I'm collecting a Coach of the Year award after I just lost to a 16 seed. And if anybody was wired to like handle that, it's Tony, just because he's so comfortable with himself. And, he was, I'm glad if that had to happen to somebody, it happened to somebody like him, because not every coach we know could handle that the way he gracefully handled it. And then I don't want to say got rewarded for it the next year, but buddy, they bounced back the next year. And I don't want to say they erased that, but they turned what was a devastating story into, it can be a Disney movie if you wanted to. Let's start it. Opening scene is Virginia UMBC. Let's take the movie from there. We'll conclude it with that national championship. It could be a great, it went from an awful story to something that could be a wonderful movie.
Yeah. That's why it's so high on the list. In the history of American sports, do we have anything that you place beside this, where you have a very, very good team suffer an immediate, historic, embarrassing defeat, and literally the next year come back and win a championship? What compares to this? I don't think we've ever seen anything like it. That's why I put it so high on the list. Virginia was 29-3 going into the NCAA tournament the next year. Again, most of the cast back from the group that suffered this loss. They took a loss to Florida State in the ACC tournament, but they were still a number 1 seed. Tony Bennett he doesn't really change anything. He sticks with what he believes in. At the time, I wrote a story or two about, and there were plenty of stories written about just like the perseverance of this and his mindset with all of that. And he was perfectly wired for it. They had a quick tremble against Gardner-Webb. This is, if you look at the box score, you don't think much of it, but early there was a little bit of a scare from Gardner-Webb. They get out of there. They bounce Oklahoma in the second round with typical, Wahoo ruggedness, no issues there. I was there in Louisville for the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. They beat Oregon 53-49. It was a rough game. They kind of elbow the Ducks out of the tournament, but they were truly threatened. Oregon had the lead maybe with 5 minutes to go or something like that, GP. And then, this is what I referenced earlier on the show, the Elite Eight against Purdue. I do think it's one of the 5 best games I've ever seen in person. And then I've been fortunate enough to see some pretty amazing games. Carson Edwards was NBA Jam. He's on fire! 42. Not another Purdue player got double digits. 42. And the media seating's right there on the court. He hits at least 3 or 4 of these shots like right in front of me. It's insane. He almost pulled Purdue to the Final Four in historic fashion, but he didn't. And that's because with Virginia down by 2, 70-68.
This is the play of the tournament.
With 5 points. Well, and by the way, as we're going through all this, the Oregon, and then this game, and then the next 2, Virginia's path to win the championship is insane. The things they overcome, the odds they beat, it feels star-kissed. It feels fated. It feels touched from the heavens because of what happened the year before, because there are so many ways in which just one thing happens differently and they don't do it, but they freaking did it, man. So Ty Jerome misses a foul shot. Mamadi Diakite gets his paw on it and just volleyball taps it back into the backcourt. It's a freshman, Kihei Clark. He tracks it down. And I remember us podcasting about this, like in the aftermath of when the game happened or whenever we talked about it. The thing that's still so amazing to me about this moment, and Kihei Clark's got this weird bookend to his career. Like he has this play as a freshman.
Threw the ball away. Correct.
There's just odd vibes around Virginia in general. But he's got some good stuff, and this is some of the good stuff with Kihei Clark. He tracks it down. He doesn't rush. He's aware of the clock, but he doesn't overhurry. Like it would be completely understandable in this moment for Kihei Clark to suddenly like lose his mind and then chuck up a shot from half court. It would be completely understandable if that's what happened. That's not what happened. He tracks it down, just one arm passes it up to Diakite, and it's just in enough time. Diakite has the wherewithal. He has the awareness to catch it, bunny hop, get the shot up just before the buzzer goes off. It sinks. It goes in. They go to overtime. They beat Purdue. It is just an all-time March Madness play. And before we get to the Final Four and title game, GP, yeah, that Purdue-Virginia game, as we go through this, like we're giving you plenty of stuff to go back and read and watch. Go back and watch the Purdue-Virginia game, Elite Eight from 2019. It is an all-time stunner classic.
So I've never even thought about this before, which is what's the greatest assist in NCAA tournament history?
Well, Arcidiacono kind of has one, and now so does Kihei Clark. Yeah.
Okay. So Arcidiacono has one. The pass to Christian Laettner is going to be on the list somewhere.
I don't know if Wittenberg is technically considered an assist. It was definitely a shot.
I'm not calling that an assist. That's an offensive rebound and a putback. That's not going to. I believe so anyway. But I would put this on the list, and maybe it's recency bias, but for Kihei Clark as a freshman, and I would say this as a 22-year-old, but as a true freshman in college basketball, to have the wherewithal to stay composed and realize there's time to make a play here, not just heave a ball at the rim. There's no way to prove this. Here's what I believe. 4 out of 5 players in that same position, maybe more, just grab it and throw it at the rim. And then lose the game. And he understood that he had time to do what I don't think most people would have understood in that moment. You have time to do, because I've talked to players about this. It's just the clock it's either moving faster than you think or not as fast as you think, but you can get disoriented in the moment. And he never did. And he got the ball. He stayed composed. He got it where it needed to be, got it to overtime. Then they win the game. And that is, obviously, without that, they don't win the national championship. That's an all-time great NCAA tournament play that probably won't show up on the list when you see that, but it's on there. That is an incredible basketball play, and not by the guy who made the shot, although the shot was incredible.
That's great, but
the shot was great.
Yeah,
it's everything Kihei Clark did,
it's been connected to GP though. Like DK, he makes the shot possible by he's the one who flicks it back, and then he doesn't know it in the moment. But the ball's coming right back to him in about 4.2 seconds. And he gets a shot off. Just a wild sequence. We've had, coincidentally enough, I didn't plan it this way. Just like we talked about 2 Elite Eight games that I mean, those got to be 2 of the 5 or 6 best Elite Eight games ever. And if you made a list of top Elite Eight games, which I actually have done in the past, like easily get to 30 without breaking a sweat there. Just wild stuff.
There are great Elite Eight games in the history of the tournament that get referenced all the time. That Adam Morrison game, the UConn George Mason game. Here we are here.
Morrison was Sweet 16, but I know what you mean.
Oh my
boo. There's been Illinois, Arizona. There's been plenty right over the years. Don't even get me rolling here. Let's get to the final 2 games and we can call it a show. So then they play Auburn in the semis. They're down 61-57 with under 8 seconds to go. See, this stuff, I do feel like unless you're a Virginia fan or a true diehard, again, the probability of Virginia pulling this off, some of this gets lost a little bit later because of, frankly, what we're talking about here, the massiveness of losing to a 16 and then winning it all the next year. Like that becomes the story that people remember more than the details that enabled it to happen. Kyle Guy hits a corner 3 with 6.5 to go. And then this is certainly remembered, and it's very much remembered down in the state next to yours, GP, when Guy then gets fouled.
Yes.
Okay. One more time, relitigated. I actually do think he was fouled. Agree or disagree? Because reasonable minds can absolutely differ on this. Samir Dowdy was the one that fouled him with 0.6 seconds to go, sent Guy to the line. He hits the shots. Auburn winds up losing. Virginia wins to go on to the national championship. Was it a foul?
I don't want to say one way or the other because I did not go back and watch it, and I don't have a great memory over it, but I should have gone back and watched it.
You're good. I want to say when we podcasted on this that you were of the opinion that it was a foul. But Virginia wins 63-62 in the national semi. I remember talking to Bruce for HQ after that game and him handling it extremely well, which is no huge surprise, but it's just And he's since made another Final Four. But you just, as any coach will tell you, and understandably so, when you get to a Final Four, no matter where you are in your life, there's no assurance you'll ever get back there. It is such coveted territory that I just remember, for all of the just gleefulness of Virginia, the way that Pearl handled that loss that night, it stuck with me all these years later. He really composed himself well, because he had every right to be, and it's not like he was, just sitting there taking it. Just, he was very composed. At least when I wound up speaking to him, and why would I have been? I don't remember being at his press conference and what he would have said after that. But a tough way to go out. And then we get to the title game, the rare title game, by the way, that went to overtime. Virginia wins 85-77, and they kind of edged away in overtime. And I remember there being a lot of stuff with this title game, like some people writing that it's the most boring title game matchup ever, and this isn't interesting, and all this stuff. And meanwhile, like, it happens in the context of Virginia having one of the most dramatic 6-game runs to win a title ever. And I think the ratings, not that I really, television ratings aren't going to affect how I feel about a college basketball game one way or another, but I think they actually wound up being way better after the fact than people thought going in, because it was Texas Tech, which never makes it to the stage, and Virginia, which plays the way that it plays. And then you have DeAndre Hunter, who was not in the game a year before when they lose to UMBC. He's hurt. He can't play. And on this night, here he is. Corner 3, 12 and a half seconds to go, puts Virginia into a tie game that enables the game to get into overtime. And they eventually wind up pulling away in OT. But it was also a very, very good, very dramatic game. That Texas Tech team, of course, coached by Chris Beard, had Jarrett Culver. Here's one for you. Jarrett Culver was #1 in Player of the Year at KenPom that year, and then he wound up going into the NBA, and yeah, that was conceivably probably going to be the high point of his basketball life. But Matt Mooney, man, Tariq Owens, I remember Old Town Road being huge and getting played in both of Texas Tech's Final Four games down when this was happening there. An awesome national championship game, an awesome all-time run. Virginia has a story that I wrote this at the time. We're not going to, we can't ever see anything like this again, because there can't ever be a first time a 16 beats a 1. But I just don't even if we've seen a 16 beat a 1 since, Purdue got really, really, really close, really, really, really close. And then it ran into the behemoth that was UConn. I just don't think we'll see this again. What Virginia did was a 1 of 1 and an incredible thing to document and see up close as it happened over a 2-year period.
So Texas Tech's on the wrong side of that. Chris Beard, the head coach there, that year gets eliminated by the eventual national champion, obviously, because it was in the title game. Year before, also eliminated by the eventual national champion Villanova. So he, in back-to-back years, got eliminated by the best team in the country. For Virginia, everybody remembers they lost to UMBC, then come back and win the tournament. They were 66-6 over a 2-year span. I mean, 31-3 before in the year that they lost to UMBC, and then backed it with 35-3 national championship. Like, will a power? I know we just say things like this all the time. The honest answer is, who knows? I don't know. I can't tell the future. But like, think about this: power conference school goes 66-6 over a 2-year period. When's that happening again?
Whew. It's not that I can't. I actually could see it happening, but it's just that's especially in this age, very, very tough to pull off. And when Tony retired last fall, I don't know if I made the column or not, but one thing he talked about, and I think he told me in the one-on-one, but I think he said at the press conference as well, like, he had immense pride. And you can consider this a little bit old-fashioned. That's fine. Tony wouldn't even blame me for thinking it that way, but it's just how he's wired, man. He had immense pride that they won it, not just having done it a year after, like he would have taken the title no matter how it came, but that everyone came back, because transfers did happen with regularity in 2018-19. It's not like this has only been a thing in the past 4 years. It's obviously grown significantly more, but they still happen. So no one balked and bounced on that. And that they did it before a time when you could theoretically like buy a Final Four roster or buy a national championship roster. He's not anti this stuff, but he had a certain sense of pride with how he grew up in the game, the reasons he got into coaching as the son of obviously Dick Bennett. It really meant something to him, because effectively, like, Baylor was probably Baylor really was the last national championship team to win a championship before. I mean, don't get me wrong, it happened 15, 20, 30, 50 years too late, with players rightfully earning money off of playing this game. But the way that Virginia did it, that formula cannot be duplicated again.
For some context, In those 2 years, Virginia 66-6. When UConn just won back-to-back national championships in those 2 years, 68-11.
Yeah.
So lost 5 more, and those UConn teams were great. They lost 5 more times over that 2-year span while winning back-to-back titles than Virginia lost in those 2 years. So 66-6, 2-year span, culminates with a national title. Just an awesome story, and obviously deserves its place where it is on this list. I think we got to decide this right now.
What?
Does this go ahead or below Bob Knight being terminated in September?
It's your call. If it's your call, this goes below Bob Knight. I think this should be ahead of it, but I did say you have the choice of picking when the written stuff.
Okay, then let me.
Is Bob Knight being fired a bigger story than the end of Mike Krzyzewski's career?
Okay, let me frame it this way. I'm going to argue against myself. Lots of coaches get fired, even legendary coaches. It happens. Nolan Richardson got fired. Legendary coaches get fired all the time. It's a wild story connected to Bob Knight, but let me tell you something that doesn't happen all the time. Lose to a 16 seed, come back, win the whole thing the next year. Go 66-6 over a 2-year span. I submit Virginia doing what it did in 2018 and 19 is a bigger story than Bob Knight being fired because legends are often fired. I'd say Bob Knight's got to be 7.
All right, so he's 7, and then Coach K losing to Carolina's 8.
I think that's right.
Okay, and that's where we'll.
About time I had a say in this thing.
We have 5 more stories to go.
Woohoo!
That episode will come.
I haven't even done the figuring on. Okay, what else is out there? I haven't even thought about what else is out there.
You know what? If you can't avoid it, don't try. I want you to not know it till I drop it in the Google Doc when that time comes. Try not to think about it. All right. Because I think if you think about it, you can probably get the 5. I know people as they're listening they're deducing, and plenty of folks are going to be able to figure out the 5. Some of it will be how I frame it, how I word it, but it should be something that you can figure out. We will have the top 5 episode coming later in July. You got back-to-back episodes here because of the slowness of the news cycle. But as we said earlier in the show, we do expect significant updates from the selection committee later this week. So I will be on the road this week for recruiting to see the Adidas event and Nike. GP will be at Peach Jam next week. Nike is actually spreading this out over 2 weeks. So we are giving you the maximum coverage possible. So that will lead to me being on the road later this week when we will podcast, depending on where I'm at when that news breaks. And then next week when GP's on the road, we'll get you covered. But our next few episodes will be more recruiting-based, news cycle-based, and then we'll finish this up sometime before we get out of July with the top 5 stories of the past 25 years.
Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle. He's a legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching and listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, please go do so. Apple and Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. That's got to be reflected in the comments. So please do that. And we're going to talk to you again real soon. 90 minutes in July.
Yeah, maybe.
Till then, take care.